Bonjour. Bonjour. Okay, let's start with the first question. Comment est ta excursion préférée? Ma excursion préférée. Désolé, je ne sais pas. Okay, never mind. Qu'est-ce que tu as fait le week-end dernier avec ta famille? Je ne sais pas. Ok. Qu'est-ce que tu vas faire le week-end prochain avec tes amis? Je ne sais pas. Comment est ta famille? Je ne sais pas. As-tu des frères ou des sœurs? Je ne sais pas. Comment tu t'appelles? Oh, je m'appelle... je m'appelle Newman. Merci. Give up. The French speaking exam is definitely really terrifying. I personally am very terrified from this exam because it's just so nerve-wracking sitting there, having the teachers ask you questions and then you have to instantly respond. I find it pretty terrifying. It is quite scary compared to something like writing where I have lots of time. I can do it at my own pace. In speaking, they ask me a question, I have to instantly respond, and it can be very scary, and in that pressure you can really forget what you're meant to be doing and exactly all those key phrases that you had learned. So that's exactly why I decided to make this video, to go in a bit more depth about the speaking exam and exactly how you can prepare for it and how you can do really well for it. Okay, so we start off with the roleplay and the photo card. They're moderately simple compared to the actual general conversation because you're literally allowed to write your notes and take them in with you. So what I suggest doing is spending more time towards the photo card rather than the roleplay, because the roleplay, they just give you bullet points. You can just write a sentence covering the bullet point, and you can also form your question from where it is, and the unexpected is normally something nice and straightforward, so you shouldn't worry too much about that. But for the photo card, the unexpected questions are more broader and more focused towards the theme that you're covering, and you might want to talk a bit more about them. So what you can do if you have more time left over is spend them trying to figure out what the questions could be in the photo card. So for example, in my mock exam I got a photo card on, it was a family camping. So the first question I remember was something to do with, the first question is always, what do you see in the photo? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a sur la photo? And then after that they gave me a question on whether I preferred camping, if I liked camping. I think it was that. It was something to do with camping, advantages and disadvantages of camping, that's what it was. And the third question was what I would like to do in the Christmas holidays. So, I think it was a future tense question, but the point is they normally cover all the tenses in the 5 questions. So if I knew that they covered a future tense question and a present tense question, then they're probably going to have a past tense question for one of the 2 unexpected questions. So what I did for that exam was actually prepare. I wrote down a few bullet points and things I would say if I got something to do with past tense, and luckily I did. I managed to get the other one on, I think it was what I did in the summer holidays last year or something, and then the other one was whether I preferred going on holiday with my family or with my friends. So it wasn't that bad, and you basically just have to get used to talking on the spot. The best way to do that is to have someone test you, so to get a friend with you and just let them test you different questions and make sure that you're really good at spontaneously responding to random questions. For the photo card and the roleplay, I also suggest this book, this GCSE AQA French CGP book. It's got a lot of practice, it's got all notes and everything. I personally don't really like notes that much, I don't need them. I actually only got this because the school made us gay, and the only thing I find useful is the actual questions. And for example, if I show this over here, we've got a role play, and what you can do is you can have a friend or a sibling basically read the teacher's part, and you can prepare for the part that you get given. So this is the student's one and this is the teacher's one, and you can have someone else ask you different questions, and you can get really prepared with how you can answer role plays. And the same goes with photo cards. This book also has photo cards, if I can find them. Oh, here's one. It's literally just a plane. I remember looking at this and being really confused because there's not much to talk about in that photo. But make sure, if you're talking about photo card, to learn what left is, what right is, what on top of is, behind, stuff like that. So à gauche, à droite, stuff like that, because then it really helps with your how you structure your sentences for the photo card. I will link down a list of key phrases as well if I manage to find a document where it just has loads of key phrases you can use in your speaking for the photo card and the role play. It's actually really useful to say things like they're in the process of doing this, they're doing that, it looks like they're all happy, it looks like there's this many people, there's 3 boys, there's 1 girl, stuff like that. Make sure you know how to say things like that, because a lot of the times you get people in your photo. I know in that one there was no people, but most of the time you do get people, and you can describe how many people there are, whether they're boys or girls, how their hair is, what they're wearing, stuff like that. Just make sure you learn different pieces of vocab, because vocab is definitely really important. It's not as important as in reading and listening, because in reading and listening they give you vocab and you have to understand it. In this you can choose what vocab you want, so it's not that bad of an issue. Vocab shouldn't be your number 1 priority when you're focusing on speaking. I think it's more important to work on your tenses and to work on just being spontaneous and fluent. What about the actual speaking itself, the actual general conversation, the main juice of the entire paper, because it's worth a lot of marks. It's half the amount of marks of the entire thing, which is quite a lot. So for this, what I recommend doing is to have your entire list of questions on one document so you can refer to them. What I actually did for my mocks was I wrote all those questions down on slips of paper. If I can find... oh wait, no, I can't find them. I remember ripping them up after the exam. Yeah, so that was a nice state of relief for me. But basically what I did was I wrote all the different questions I had on each theme and topic down, and then what I would do is every lunch and break is just hand them to one of my friends and be like, just test me on anything. Try and find the hardest questions, just test me on them. And I did that so many times that I managed to know. Basically what I did was, this mock exam I tried focusing more towards being spontaneous and just figuring out responses on the spot rather than learning pre-made responses, which I usually used to do in year 10 because of the amount of questions. There were way more questions for these mocks than in the end of years back then. So it actually worked really well for my exams, because I got so used to just answering questions on the spot that when it came to my actual exams it felt the same thing and it wasn't that bad. What I suggest doing though is to not go completely blank. I suggest to have a 50-50 on improvisation and pre-made responses, because it's really important not to go blank in the exam. So what I suggest doing, what I actually did was I created this document which I called French snippets, and what I did was I wrote a snippet, that's what I called it, a snippet of different things, different mini paragraphs I could talk about whenever I go blank. There was one on football, there was one on cinema, there was one on cricket, there was one on everything basically that I could think of. So if I randomly got blank, I talked about going to a restaurant and then I got blank, I can quickly go, oh wait a minute, I made a snippet on food. I can just quickly just say all of that, and in that time, because I learnt those responses completely word by word, I can figure out what else I can mention. And it was quite useful, because what I would do in those snippets is put key phrases and vocabulary that I wouldn't normally come up on the spot, because when you're in that sort of pressure you forget to include all your tenses, you forget to include all those advanced structures, all those different pieces of vocabulary you would have normally put in your writing, all those, just everything that you normally would have put, but because you're in that sort of pressure you can't remember all of that. So it's really important to, before you go in your exam, to remember, okay, I need to include this tense, I need to include that tense, I need to include every single tense that we've learned, because it guarantees you high marks if you include all your tenses, include past, present and future. If you don't cover all 3 aspects, you're not going to get high enough marks. You're not going to get as good as you want. And another thing is, make sure you ask your question. It's really important to ask your question early rather than later on, because you might forget, and then when the teacher prompts you, you can go, oh no, I forgot my question, what should I say? And then you can go completely blank, which is what happened in my end of years last year. I completely forgot to ask a question, and when I got asked to ask a question, as-tu des questions pour moi? That's what my teacher said to me. I went completely blank, and then I ended up asking a question in the form of tu instead of vous, which was a mistake. That's why I managed to, for these mock exams, when my teacher asked me about the food in the canteen, I said, et vous, que pensez-vous de la nourriture dans la cantine? And he responded, and it was nice because then I didn't have to worry about asking a question. It was out of my mind, and I could focus on including tenses and everything like that. One other really good tip for the general conversation, and also writing as well, is to learn really high level small pieces of vocabulary or phrases, because you can just slot them in whenever you want, and they really just make your speaking and writing a whole lot better. So for example, one of the phrases I learnt was, because I normally like to say when I get asked what do you do in the weekends, I normally like to say I do a lot of things. For example, I do this, and it's a bit boring. What I decided to do is I learnt je profite d'un éventail d'activités interessantes. And basically what that meant was I enjoy a range of interesting activities, and it was definitely just a small thing, but it really made the entire speaking a bit better, and I added loads of different phrases like that all throughout my speaking to make it much better. There will probably be times where you go completely blank and you have no idea what to say at all, but remember, just stay calm and just say anything. It's better to say something than nothing, because if you end up thinking, no, I can't use that, I need to use something that's really good so I can impress my teacher, you're going to spend way too much time thinking rather than speaking. It's much better to just say whatever you can rather than just say nothing. What happened in my end of years last year was I got so panicked that I completely went blank on all of the questions, and I ended up going désolé, je ne sais pas, and I had to skip to another question. So what I recommend doing also is to learn phrases like that. Je ne sais pas, I don't know. Je ne comprends pas, I don't understand. Pouvez-vous répéter s'il vous plaît? Can you repeat please? Stuff like that. Make sure you learn them just in case things go wrong. You can easily ask them. You can also fill in a bit of time by asking them to repeat the question, because that way you can quickly figure out what you're going to say. Okay, I've mentioned a lot of things in this video, but what I really want to say as an all-rounded point on French speaking is just to practice. Practice is really good for French speaking. What I mean by practice is to just get people to ask you different questions, and just make sure you get so used to the questions list that you just know what to say every single time. Don't rely too much on pre-learnt responses. It's much better to be spontaneous, because it just helps much better, because that way you don't go blank in the exam as much, and just stay calm in the actual exam, because it's not worth it panicking. It's just going to make everything go wrong. Make sure you have a mental checklist in your mind of things that you need to complete. So be like, okay, I used future tense, tick that off. I used past perfect tense, I can tick that off. Just always have in your mind, okay, have I asked my question? Have I put this piece of thing? Have I included a negative somewhere? Have I included an opinion somewhere? Just stuff like that, just to really make sure you just have everything in your mind, so you don't forget anything, you don't go blank, you don't stay to two basic words, and also learn a few pre-made phrases and things. They're also really good. Before I actually go, I would like to give you guys a few resources that you can use for remembering loads of different key phrases and things like that. One thing I really recommend is French with Alexa. It's a YouTube channel, and she gives loads of sample paragraphs that you can take parts out of and use into your own speaking, and it definitely helps me a lot, because there will be things she says that sound really good, and I just take those parts out and I just put them into my memory. So what I did was, with my piece of paper that had all the questions, what I also did was at the very back I had a list of things I had to include in my speaking, and I just kept on looking back at them. I called them juicy phrases, and I just kept on looking back at them so I don't forget them. And then in the actual exam I just remembered, oh, I haven't included this, let me write it, let me say it, and just stuff like that. Also in the description I'm going to put a document which has a list of really good phrases that you can use, and it will just really help with your speaking. You don't have to learn a lot of them. A lot of them are very, very complicated. I didn't actually make the document myself. I just remember finding it somewhere and saving it. So I'll link that down in the description as well. Good luck if you still have your oral exams. Obviously, for the GCSEs themselves, you need to make sure you prepare as much as you can. I think that's the best thing you can do. Apart from that, I have nothing else to say. So have an awesome day. Make sure you revise your French. Make sure you stay productive, and I'll see you again next time. Au revoir. These glasses are not real. I don't wear glasses.